the corpsman in situations, but he had done 2 tours in Afghanistan.
Wow.
So,
keeping people alive.
Well, yeah, exactly. And it was just like whenever he walked in and saw it, he was just like, oh, I deal with this shit all the time. It's no big deal.
The right stuff?
Yeah, finally I was just like, comfort.
So I'm not going to be cleaning vomit out of my leg?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't need vomit on my leg right now, please.
Actually, I tell you what, I probably would have taken vomit over what happened next.
Ooh.
Because both those pipelines were covered in barnacles. So my leg was like plugged with barnacles.
On the inside.
On the inside.
Bone.
Oh, shit.
And they're just like, okay, it's 5 days before we can get you into a surgery room.
Not only do they have to cut those out all individually, but they're now growing and living in your ecosystem, right? I mean, that's a fucking barnacle. They exist to feed off of protein, so they're eating you, right?
We never even got to that point because it's like, luckily...
Mr. Marine?
Yeah. Just
Starts
total.
cutting them out with his knife?
No, he pulled them out with tweezers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next best thing.
Oh,
Thanks
geez.
for not using a knife, man. I love you, bro. Next 60,000 beers on me.
Man, your Christmas card list is growing.
Christmas card list.
We did get him a big bottle of good whiskey for that.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
That's like 20-year whiskey, right?
Oh, geez, yeah.
33-year whiskey.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd probably say for about a good 4 hours, he was just pulling that stuff out of my leg.
Picking it out, right?
With
like
me.
a monkey cleaning its you know.
Yeah,
Bam, bam,
exactly.
Picking away.
Except with
searching and looking and picking away.
Except I was screaming at the top of my head.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
making
He
voice.
probably didn't even hear you. He was a trained medic. He was a Marine.
Yeah,
medic.
it's just like
he probably never even. Oh, he was screaming.
No,
So are you suggesting that this was painful?
Just a tad bit.
Tad bit? Okay.
Yeah, I was making noises I didn't think my body was even capable of making.
Wow.
I mean, it was so bad, and it's like they had finally geared up the next team to go make another dive, and they're in the chamber over next to us. And you got to remember, these are steel chambers, and they could hear me screaming.
Not just steel. How thick are they?
I would probably say
6, 8, 10 inches.
I'd probably say about 1.5 inches, but then you have insulation too.
Okay.
Because
they
it's
found a way to lessen it because I know the old dive bells and decompression chambers were sometimes 8 inches thick, right?
With
6, 8 inches thick.
with insulation.
With the insulation.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
with the insulation, they're
Yeah.
about 8 inches thick.
Right.
But I mean, the metal itself, I'd
Because
say
you have to recreate the environment and then slowly release the pressure, right? So the oxygen
But
basically doesn't boil out of your skin.
Well,
right?
and that's why they make them cylindrical. So there's not sharp edges because it's
so you
Right.
can clean all the edges out, right?
well that and the tensile strength. Of the
Right,
system
right,
itself.
right.
Shape
Yeah,
has
yeah,
more strength.
yeah.
You're right. Yeah,
Absolutely.
An egg. They should be shaped
Stronger
like an
than
egg.
a square.
Sitting in my egg.
It's just like
And we're still a couple days away from even reaching the surface at this point.
We basically had just started decompression at that point. I mean, whenever he finished cleaning out my leg, and the bad part, and this is like the MVP of all this, is my wife, because it's like I texted her and was just like, the good news is I'm decompressing. Bad news is I'm not coming home. So automatically she's...
level 9.
Yeah, she's... Well, and then we were in the process of closing on a house the next day.
Oh, of course.
Mm-hmm. And I was just like, okay, I'll text you whenever...
Let's not worry about the house right now.
Well, it wasn't even not worry about the house. I was just like, I'll text you whenever he's done cleaning out my leg. Well, I went into... like ridiculous shock. I was like literally in convulsions
because it hit you, right? The reality is that when the reality.
The pain.
No, it was pain.
Pain. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like reality took about 3 or 4 months later.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but it's just like at that point it was just strictly pain and survival. So
Sure.
She's just like, okay, well, text me whenever you're done. I wasn't able to do that.
Sure.
And she's like going and closing on this house, and she's just like, okay, I hope my soon-to-be husband's still alive.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean,
Heavy.
she went through a lot also because it's like but then I finally
God.
came to and was able to text, and But then what happened was, it's like I had so much dead skin and, dead tissue, but they were like, okay, what we need to do is we need to keep the bone and the tendons hydrated. So they packed me with a bunch of wet gauze.
Yeah.
To keep everything wet, and then they wrapped it up. Well, 24 hours later, they go to remove the wet gauze, and all my nerves had attached to the wet gauze.
And then they just rip them off, right?
Oh boy,
that's what they did, right? Because that's what they do. That's
no. That's exactly.
That's what they say promotes growth. Is when they do that. They say that promotes growth.
I could have handled without that growth.
So
it didn't make that big of a difference. I have no.
They did it to me on like my finger, right? Which was, I mean, come on. We're talking about a finger compared to what you're going through, and I raised my fist and I was about to punch. Reflex reaction was, pow! Right?
No, exactly. No, that's exactly what it is. I'm just like, well, once again, I'm back in scream mode.
So I'm even if you can't draw, you can probably draw their faces, right? You can draw their faces to a T. It's like, I didn't know you could draw, Danny. I can't. They're dead. My goal is to reach $100,000. You know anyone?
Yeah, right.
No. I can only imagine.
Oh, geez. I mean, and then, it was a rough 3 days out. Because after that, they put a bovine skin over my leg, like what they use with burn victims.
Sure.
So they were
obviously to help try to regrow the flesh, the epidermis over the top.
Right. Well, basically, what they were most concerned about, because they knew they were going to have to tear it open again. So what they were more concerned about was the hydration.
The bones.
Yeah, the bone and the tendon.
The tendons, like you're saying, the hydration.
Right, yeah, keeping that all wet. So they put...
Can we see... Do you have a scar? Can we see it?
Oh, geez.
Do you not show it off? Or I see you're wearing a compression over it right now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it swells up to the size of a watermelon if I don't wear it.
Wow.
But they actually had to cut my lat muscle out.
Oh, to replace the tissue and the...
right, because there was nothing to graft skin to.
Sure,
it's like I basically got a scar going from my waist to my armpit.
Oh, goodness gracious. Goodness gracious, bro. Wow. They did pretty good. That's not that bad.
Well, no, I think it's my weightlifting system that does pretty good.
Iron Keel Strength, Webster, Texas.
Iron Keel Strength.
They did pretty good, man. They did pretty good. And obviously, you're still fit. You can use your leg.
And that was a big thing about why I was able to do it, because it's like I spent 2 months in the hospital. I was on bed rest for 4 months.
Good Lord.
Yeah, I went from
a guy who's so active too, right? You're super active. You can't sit down. Mm-hmm. Hey, we're going to need you to lay in this bed for like 4 months.
Well, no, actually, it was on my couch because we couldn't even get me to my bed.
Wow. Exactly. So you're already doing like one leg lift up?
But there is a happy ending. Mm-hmm. And we're gonna discuss that when we come back.
We're back with Danny Balli. He's telling us a very interesting story about almost dying.
I like to not think of it as almost dying.
Almost dying. No, dude, you almost died.
I'm a cockroach, man. You can't kill a cockroach.
But I think one thing that you had going for you during this entire process was your level of physical fitness, right?
That was actually one of the only things I had going for me, because it's like at the time I was at 180 pounds. I was in the best fitness state of my life, and I went from 180 pounds to 135. Because I was in the hospital for 2 months. I was on bed rest for 4 months. And it was just, I went through over 15 surgeries in 4 years, had to learn how to walk 3 times.
Wow.
And I tell you what, that was one of the things, was my gym community was what really pulled me out of it. Because I remember, I was still... I think I was probably about close to 4 months out of the accident, and I roll into my old gym just to say hi to people, and the trainer comes up to me and he's just like, "What's your problem? I see 3 good limbs on you. Get in here and do some work."
By rolling, you mean you rolled in a wheelchair?
Yeah, I was in a wheelchair.
You rolled into a gym.
Yeah. And I was just like, all right, let's get to work. Let's see what we can do.
That's real though when someone talks to you like that. That's love because speaking without ego and seeing past people and into their spirit, that's something special, man. That's so what came first? Did the physical fitness come first or did the diving come first?
Well, actually, they kind of worked hand in hand because it's like I went into diving straight out of high school. I was a wrestler, through junior high and high school.
Got to stay fit, got to stay trim, got to keep a weight class. You learned how to drop weight. You learned.
Right. And then whenever I hit about 19, 20, closer to 21, everybody was just like, you're getting fat. So I was just like...
Not challenged anymore. So you started to challenge yourself, right? Emilio Estevez said it in Young Guns. You got to challenge yourself every day, fellas.
Yeah, exactly.
If you don't, you get slow, and that's when they come for you.
Mm-hmm. Right. Wow, that's actually pretty good.
It was. I live by those words, man.
But yeah, so I started lifting weights and really getting into it, and then I got really big into mountain biking, and then my wife was the one that actually got me into CrossFit, and I started doing CrossFit, fell in love with it, and it made me better as a diver just because it's all about functional fitness. Diving is all functional fitness. So
do you think that okay, so CrossFit isn't like normally being fit, right? It's an activity. It's not weightlifting. It's not cross training. It's not anything. It's kind
of like a combination of
right. It's kind of a combination. So it's more about being in the moment, right? I mean, CrossFit is like being in the moment and doing this activity to the best of your ability and using your whole body and arm, just like diving is, right? So was that the call? Was that the call? Was that the similarity in it? You're like, hey, if I'm not diving, I got to be ready to dive, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, no, actually, it was just like I want to have a reason to get out of bed and not just start drinking at 9 o'clock in the morning. If I'm hitting an 11 o'clock CrossFit class, then I'm not drinking until after 11.
Respect.
I got you, man.
Yeah, I run that kind of gym.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I do the same. I work out 3 days a week so that I don't drink those 3 days.
Yeah, and it lessens you up the night before. Also,
it does. It does. There are 3 straight. So by the end of the third, I'm sore as hell. By then, I recover and I do a podcast with interesting guests and
while drinking beer
and get to drink beer.
Yeah, it's just like are you guys hiring?
Cheers, man. It's the requirement. Yeah.
Yeah,
got to be extreme, and I think you like 3 levels of extreme there.
But the pay's not as good as saturation diving, I don't think.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the pay's pretty good in saturation diving, right?
As long as you can get work, it's real good. Yeah. I mean,
but then it's dangerous, obviously.
Yeah, well,
as long as you can get work and live.
Well, right. I mean, for the amount of education that I had, as I said, it's like I basically straight out of high school, I went into dive school, started saturation dive, or not saturation diving, but started in the diving field.
Sure.
And it was just kind of mind-blowing. But then I was seeing the amount of money that my friends were making that had just graduated college, and it was like, oh, well, maybe I didn't make a bad decision.
I'm going to tell you, you might even be above a lot of them, man. Because
that's his point. I think that you're making more money doing saturation diving. Than
school of hard knocks is just as hard to go through as the school of
Right, and that's one of those, college isn't for everyone.
It's not.
I mean, if I would have went to college, I would have flunked out, and I'd probably be a short order cook at an Applebee's somewhere.
Nah, man, you'd probably be district manager. Right? I mean, you got.
I'd hope so.
Hey, cream always rises to the top. It really does. It does rise to the top, man. It does. Especially when you enter a room of people that all do the same trade as you, and it gets to that point, it's the pecking order's laid out almost within hours. The pecking order of who's who. It's kind of funny, man. I'm like I said, I'm an electrician, and we deal with death on a daily basis. Not as extreme as what you guys are, but we have protocols. We have extreme protocols. We have things that we do, and that's what happens, man. The pecking order it's established quick. And the brotherhood is established quick. Otherwise, you can't.
Well, right.
You can't communicate or deal with anybody if they're not you know, when you're in a group and you say something and you turn around, if there's one guy not paying attention, it's like,